You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
You are very welcome. I am Ahonu, and today we have with us our great friend, Teon Lucas. Now, many of you will remember that we have interviewed Teon Lucas in the past. Indeed, the first interview we did was Experiencing Your Multidimensional Selves back in 2023. That was actually on 11/11, which is Aingeal Rose's birthday. Very interesting time period that was. And the second time we covered Your Heart is a Portal, and that was in January 20th, 2024. And we got a lot of really interesting feedback from that one, all about the heart and how the heart is a portal. And we may indeed touch on some of that today. And then the third one was From Fear to Fun, which we did on July 13th, 2024. And today we have Teon back again to speak with us about mastery. What is mastery? And we are going to cover what it takes to engage true mastery and awareness, and how awareness leads to mastery. But I do believe he's also going to tell us about how to unmesh from the matrix and how to unravel ourselves from trauma, and to do this kind of thing consciously. So we're in for a real treat today. You're very welcome, Teon.
Thanks, Ahonu. And this does sound exciting. Just listening to the program, it's like, wow, I want to do this too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think it might serve our listeners and our viewers well to know that each week for the last long while, you've been doing a mastermind with a number of people. And that mastermind, I have found, I have to say, and profess a tremendous benefit from it, because it's like it opens up a whole new vista of awareness. And I hope that we'll be able to bring that into our discussion today. I'd love for you to even touch on that, just to explain to people where you're coming from before we actually get into the subject of mastery itself. So where did all this come from, Teon?
So what we started doing in the mastermind, kind of the foundation exercise we did, was introducing the connection through the heart to the causal plane of existence and the astral plane of existence. So we exist first formless as we come into this universe, and then in a light body form, which is very alive and vivid in the astral plane, and then that final outer layer, which is quite small in comparison to all those other planes, is where we're here in this physical, what we see as the physical universe. But we exist in all the other ones at the same time. Yeah. And so we introduced activating to those in the masterminds, and then we do a practice of raising our frequency using the energy of us, our consciousness, in those planes to raise up ourselves to experience the expanded awareness and potential as we integrate all three planes to become more embodied in New Earth.
Yes. And these planes that you speak about now is causal, astral, and physical, right?
Yes.
And I remember the first time that you introduced that, and I felt this sense of expansion. And it's the kind of thing that I would love for everybody in the whole world to experience, because it seriously was a feeling of not being bound anymore by the physicalness of our human bodies, that this was available to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll weave that in then. Why not?
Yes.
So mastery, let's start with the topic then. Mastery, what is it, right? So everything is appearing in a field of consciousness. Everything here in the physical is actually appearing in, sourced out of the astral plane, right? And everything in the astral plane is sourced out of the causal plane. And all of it is coming through the ideas of vibration, Om, right? Vibration, time, space, and the atom that starts creating particles and making everything that we can eventually like touch and sense and hear and see and so on. And so that process has us think we're in the physical plane, and that maybe that's all there is. We're just sensing things, right? But what's actually happening in our unconscious awareness is everything in the astral plane, everything in the causal plane. And that's forming us here, first in the astral, and then on into the layers around that make the physical.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And as we bring anything from what's unconscious into consciousness, which we'll be doing today, as you want, if you'd like to play along, then we'll be experiencing mastery, the beginnings of mastery, where we become aware of how we are being formed and how the events and the timeline is forming experiences. And we can become in charge of that instead of just subject to.
Okay, so when we hear the word mastery, usually, I know for me, I associate it with gurus and all of that, but you're not talking about that kind of mastery, or are you? Like walking through walls and shrinking to the size of an atom and all of that kind of.
Oh yeah, I am in fact. So
Okay.
there isn't a limit to how much mastery you can achieve, right? But what we're going to start with is the awareness of what's typically not conscious, right? The astral light body, bringing it into awareness, the causal presence, bringing it into awareness, the root of where the astral plane begins. We'll practice putting that into your awareness. And so as you do that, you start to have a different sense of how everything is forming here. You start to see it or feel it, hear it, you become aware of. You can become consciously and viscerally aware of things that normally you think, oh, I'd have to go be a guru to get, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But as we're entering New Earth and the frequency is already higher on the planet, those enlightened levels of you or that depth of you, you can bring it into conscious awareness much more easily.
Well, let me just sidetrack for a second here, because I'd love for people to know what you did last week. And when you said that you don't have to be a guru to do this, basically you had us have pictures in our mind, but then realize that we can take those pictures from our mind and put them into every cell of our bodies. And that was embodying this capacity to hear, feel, touch, smell, and taste everything from every cell. Now, to me, that was the beginnings of mastery, the way I understood it. And I've been doing that since then, and I find it an absolutely empowering thought. Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's part of what you're talking about in general, exactly, in terms of mastery.
We'll make sure we kind of wrap that into this talk as well. We'll give an example of that.
Excellent.
So it's up to each of us to explore and communicate with our causal and astral selves. If we want to have mastery, we're basically just taking what's not conscious to us, what's not really in our present awareness, and bringing it into our conscious awareness. Sounds very simple, and in fact it is, right? So let's start with the causal plane and introduce people to what it feels like in the causal plane, where you're formless and you're particles that are fully realized. You're very close to being a guru, or you in fact are if you can stay in that awareness continuously.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So we connect into our heart and we kind of go inward, and we think, I'm reaching inward to the source of all vibration, to the source of all of my energy, all of everything that's coming into physical. That's where the physical universe begins, in Om. Okay? And as we focus on that, just inward to that, we're going to go causal. We're just feeling a door open in our hearts to the causal plane. There. So letting that feeling of presence fill up Fill up the room, fill up the area around you. Feel it emanating out of your heart. So the door is open, causal, standing, feeling very light, maybe bubbly, effervescent, feeling like maybe a cloud or the atmosphere of energy surrounding you, pouring out from your heart to the center of your chest. How does that feel, Ahonu?
Yeah, anytime we ever do that, I feel that sense of empowerment. The odd time, though, I have to say, I feel a slightest little touch of a headache. And I've often meant to ask you about that. Is that because we're unfamiliar with that state, do you think?
I would say a headache is a sense of pressure. Like part of us is used to, and yes, unfamiliar in that sense, yes.
Yes.
Like part of us is used to, oh, I'm supposed to do things XYZ, right? And this is very free flowing and
Yes.
unfocused, it feels. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like the focus is.
In the strangest kind of a way, it almost felt like as if it was the ego trying to hold on to something. That was the sensation I got when we're saying, we're not holding on, we're letting go.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're talking about unenmeshing, if we want to go to that second point, right? Unenmeshing is where we're tuning into the feeling behind that tension. Okay. So if you notice that tension or that ego's going, oh, I don't want to let go, whatever that is, right? Where is the part of you centered in your body? If it's in your body, where do you feel, oh, I don't want to let go?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually felt it in my head.
Okay, so let's notice that in your head. And now just tune into the feeling itself and allow the feeling of tension to be there.
Yeah, it feels very like as if it is an ego battle that's going on. That's I can't describe it any better than that.
Yeah, so allow the battle to be there, right? So what we're doing is, in order to stay in the causal, we have to allow the feeling of in there's you, the pure you, right? The young, innocent, pure you. And then there's the ideas of how you're supposed to be in the world. That might describe the two sides of the battle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So allow the pure you to just be. Like remembering what is it like to be a child? Right? We did that as an example in the mastermind. We did being the child, 7 years old. How do you feel knocking on doors, seeing if kids want to come out and play, right? As you allow yourself to feel, who am I? This is one way of asking. This is a self-inquiry question. Who am I? The innocent child. Okay? And you allow that to just permeate out into your energy, the innocent child. That's what I'm referring to when I'm saying allow it to just be. Allowing that pure innocence where you don't have work, you don't need to have a certain focus, you don't have to worry about all the adult things.
I know, indeed, what's going through my head right now, it's exactly going on right now. And I'm thinking, gosh, I hope there's nobody listening to this while they're driving,
Yeah.
because I'm finding myself really relaxing into that. And but at the same time, that battle is in the 3D world and it's concerned,
So let's pick the top concern then. Right? So now we've established like a foothold into astral, and I'm sorry, causal. Okay? We're feeling the expanded presence and we're feeling like that innocent youth. So that's like your doorway, your foothold onto the threshold of staying in the causal plane, right? Now we want to understand, what is the priority? What is the other concern that's coming in that you feel won't be taken care of?
Well, it's like I say that I wouldn't want to be responsible for somebody in traffic, who's listening to this and causing an accident.
Okay, so if you're listening to this in traffic, we recommend you just sort of take in the ideas and listen to it again when you're in one place.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is there any other responsibilities you feel concerned about that won't be taken care of?
No.
Okay. So that was actually your inner wisdom saying we needed to mention that for listeners, right? It wasn't actually wrong. It was an accurate piece of information we needed to bring out, and it was there. Your intuition knew, oh, I'm worried about this. Well, then let's address it.
Yes.
So now your attention's gone.
Yes.
So what we're seeing is how the causal plane, as we're entering it, we're not becoming dumb. We're actually accessing a higher intelligence, and everything that's coming up may be part of what needs to happen, what action we need to take. There's a gem in there, in that tension, which was, now if we set the stage right and we tell listeners, listen to the ideas if you're driving, and then really sit down and go into these experiences when you're not. We've now made this a better presentation of the point we're bringing across, or of the experience.
Yeah. It feels a lot freer now. It's almost like, the white water of an ocean wave. It feels as if there's a wash going on I feel it in my head, but I'm feeling it in my body too, feeling a kind of a cleansing, a lightening, a washing, a letting go.
Yeah. So the causal presence in this, we've entered the threshold, right? And now if you're feeling it wash over your body, and if the listeners are feeling causal, you can just say causal. Right? You can feel more of that presence expanding. So you and I were now feeling that. And this space we're in, presenting this moment in this interview, is expanding more to be more causal. Okay. So the way that's happening is, the more we're coming into that, we're comfortably sitting in that, we're finding our way to kind of remove the battle and sit in it. Okay. The more the veil around each atom is peeling back. And when you peel back the veil around each atom by feeling these higher planes, or these inner planes, right, then more perspective, more energy, more vitality, more aliveness is available, and more information. Okay, so yes. Part of what is mastery is walking our way into this space and then expanding from there. And so we've made it consciously aware. We've become consciously aware of the causal plane, which normally we're not aware of.
Yes.
And it's usually it's an abstract thing sort of happening that's forming our very body. Okay? But we're usually unaware of it. Would you like to become more aware of it?
I think it's an incredible opportunity. And it's like as if it's something that I've been looking for all my life. And I'm sure a lot of people have indeed, is to be more aware. But I think there's a kind of an intellectual blockage that we ourselves have put in front of us and said, well, that's only for gurus, or that's only for people from India or in the Buddhist faith or whatever. You know, it's a sense that almost like, that's not for me, or I don't belong there, or how that's not possible, or all those kind of blockages that we put in place of our own progress.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. But yet what you've just described is the simplest thing, and yet the sensation of flow and empowerment and openness
Yeah.
is astonishing.
Yeah. And so you might think that this, which is this formless presence, how is it applicable, right? You might wonder, like, can I do anything with it, or am I just floating around in this, like, and so what we want to understand next to be able to apply this as mastery, applied mastery in my life, is some of the things that we do from the causal plane to form the astral and then physical. Not really do, but what it emanates from, what ideas are in that plane through which this one is then generated.
Okay.
So the very first one, besides being a formless particle with time, space, vibration, and the atom, besides that, we also have what's called the Panchatattva. So the Panchatattva is the 5 auric electricities which are used to form all of your experience in a form, in your light body. All of the astral plane is formed from these root causes of creation, the Panchatattva, right? So let's take a moment and experience. We're going to go inward and experience, who am I, the Panchatattva, okay? We're just going to tune into that, close our eyes and feel that and ask that question. Who am I, the Panchatattva? This is the energy of sight, beginning, the energy of sound, the energy of feeling, smell, taste. All of those 5 energies or auric electricities that form and arrange everything that makes up physical, well, astral reality and subsequently physical. It's emanating from the Panchatattva. And so right at the root of creation, when we feel what that is. We're asking our causal presence to show us or give us an experience of it. We're already feeling the causal presence, which is intelligent. And it also knows and understands these things because this is in its backyard. This is right there in the causal plane, the Panchatattva. So we're saying, hey, causal presence of me, show me the Panchatattva. I don't know what that is, but I know you do. See what I mean?
Now, this is a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
And it's because it's unfamiliar, I guess it's hard to describe, but I want to try and describe it. So let me do my best, and I may be limited in the way I'm trying to explain this, but what I'm feeling is it's like in my physical body, and I'm sure in everybody's physical body, we feel an ownership of those qualities of being able to hear, see, smell, touch, and feel all of those. So we feel an ownership of them. And I was feeling an ownership of them that belonged to the physical. But now with this exercise, it's like that's a very limited, I felt a very limited, that was a very limited way of understanding what they are. It's like, no, they belong to this other layer. Oh no, they belong to this outer layer again. And it's like as if they belong to layers of me that opened up somehow.
Yeah.
I had this sensation that when I say feel here in the physical, there's far more to it than that. And when I say smell here in the physical, there's far more to it than that.
Yes.
I had that sensation.
Yes.
Did I describe it?
Exactly. So each person is going to have their own experience, description, or metaphor for what this, when I ask that question, when you ask me, when I ask you, when one of our listeners asks and shares what they're experiencing, right? We're each going to have our own metaphor because the layer we're at now is this concept, the idea that the psyche precedes it even defines or decides what is real.
That makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
So in your psyche, now we're in like a dreamlike place, right? Where the metaphors and expression it's choosing to communicate is unique to each one of us and our experience map. Right? So for me, in my experience map, I started to feel panchatattva, and I started to feel swirling energies that formed streams. But I was those streams. Like similar to what you said, that quality, it's hard to describe, where the sensing, the feeling, the smell, and so on, there's so much more to it. I was feeling sort of a sense of what it was like to feel like the weather, to feel like the clouds, to feel like, to feel like an active, alive storm of consciousness that's made up of senses, 5 different kinds of senses. And I felt them swirling and flowing. And why that's so important to enjoy feeling that is, this is beyond any issue or experience you could possibly have in the physical, right?
Now I was sensing that when you said enjoy, I felt that this was pure joy.
Yes.
That there wasn't pain associated. You know how in the physical world you may hurt physically, or we attribute everything to the physical. And in this expansion, it felt clearly just pure joy.
Right.
On multiple levels.
Yes. Exactly. And so you're starting to now, if you start to identify as, wait, this is me. Okay, what did I just introduce you to? I introduced you to you. A depth of you that was previously not in your conscious awareness, but now it's in your conscious awareness. And it knows everything from the pure senses that have no form all the way to your light body, which is so alive. Let's try a comparison, because I want to describe the light body, right? Then we'll do an astral activation. If you pick up physical matter, pick up some dirt or sand or physical object, right? This physical object, this is the pen, is so inert compared to all of the atoms in the astral plane are teeming with aliveness and energy. They're like luminous electric. So what we're starting to uncover as we're going, okay, well, there's the causal plane and then the astral plane and then the physical. What we're starting to uncover is levels of energy and aliveness that we didn't even think existed. We were unaware of. And the astral plane is also hundreds of times larger than the physical universe. Okay?
Wow.
So if we're going, okay, we're in the state of Arizona. And let's say that was how big on our map the physical universe is.
Mm-hmm.
The astral plane is bigger than North America and South America combined. It's like many continents, or maybe the whole earth of land, because it's hundreds of times bigger. And so in the astral plane, which is alive, luminous, teeming with life, everything is alive and not like inert, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's full of so many different worlds and planets, and it's hundreds of times bigger than anything we could possibly explore here. And then within that, contained within that, emanates this tiny subset called physical reality, the universe.
Now, let me ask you a question that I know is going to come up from viewers and listeners, Teon. And it's about this particular time of the year that we're now recording this. We're coming up to Halloween. And I know from my traditions, Irish traditions, the veils are thin, and people talk about the astral as if it's something to be feared. In other words, that there's entities can bleed through into this physical, and there's fear attached to it. Can you just address that for us?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want anybody to think, when you mention astral, I would not want anybody to think, we don't want to go there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're talking about the astral plane as the entire astral cosmos that's forming physical reality. So in order for you to be here in the physical, you're coming through a stream of light that started as that causal presence we're feeling, and then it went into the astral plane and formed your light body, which is part of your health and well-being and how you have life force energy right now. Right? And then it forms the outer layer, which is the physical. So if in the physical plane or the astral plane, we have the idea of duality. We have positive charge, negative charge, which we don't have in the causal plane, right?
Okay.
We don't even have it because we don't have the Panchatattva yet forming the senses. And then we have polarity formed in the astral.
Yeah.
So it is possible to have polarity and to have distortion in the astral plane, but it's equally possible or quite a bit more prevalent in the physical plane.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the majority of your distortion is here in the physical plane.
Now, that is a beautiful entryway into us talking about unenmeshing that you mentioned earlier, because clearly what I hear you saying is that when I have fear around the astral plane, it's a cultural upbringing thing that has been embedded in my physical awareness because of perhaps parents or ancestry or whatever. But it's all to do with, oh, don't go there, that's fearful.
That's a physical reaction and a physical viewpoint of the astral. Now, there is still the potential for some distortion in the astral, right? But where we're going in this whole presentation is causal, astral, physical, right? We're going from truth and source, where you're immortal, where you're eternal, where you have unlimited health. And we're going into astral, where you're enjoying the unlimited state. And we're allowing ourselves to embody and experience that depth of the astral, not just what you might call the lower astral or the physical distortions and ideas about the astral.
Right.
We're not talking about that.
Yeah. I wanted to address it because I could feel the other. I could feel what you were talking about. I could feel that expansion. You mentioned the word immortal, and I could feel that sense of immortality, whereas the whole Halloween idea and that idea of the astral is all about physical death and, the fear that surrounds all of that. But yes, the expansion, the feeling of expansion and immortality is like beyond all of that. It really feels way past it.
Exactly. So if there's a fear about astral, right, we can go back into, okay, feel the causal, right? Because causal is truth. And if there's a certain place you're feeling tension, we can go, okay, how does that part feel? Tune into that. And then we can clear that distortion and let it go. Just like we did at the beginning of the interview.
Let's do that. Do you mind? Let's clear some of that.
So what are you feeling around? What does it feel like when you're thinking of astral as being fearful?
It feels as if it's deeply embedded. Like I said, it's cultural. It feels as if it's in my DNA that's coming down ancestrally.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Okay. And what color is the part of you that you identify with that experience?
Feels like a dirty red.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it the causal energy, causal, and introduce dirty red to your causal energy. Introduce that whole cultural experience to causal. Do you feel the expansive being that we started with earlier on the threshold of we're floating in the light? Expanded. The causal presence you look to you said, show me the Panchatattva. Okay. Introduce dirty red to causal.
Do you mind if I narrate what I'm feeling right now?
You.
Yeah, it feels like when I mentioned dirty red, it's like that was the association I had that felt negative, right? And now when it's introduced into that Panchatattva sense of, it really feels as if, like, hey, dude, there's no room for blame or punishment here, So it's like as if it forgave or absolved me bringing any negativity into that space. It's like dirty red, okay, cool, so what?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful description, because you've received the energy, the direct experience of the energy of causal truth, and introduced it to something that did not have that awareness. It's all you. But we're literally removing the separation between physical, where things seem all like, oh, this is a problem, this is an issue, da 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 da. And we're just floating back into where we started the dialogue.
Yeah.
Pure feelings, pure senses, the energy of truth.
And I know you mentioned earlier on in the beginning, and indeed we did a session on your heart as a portal. And I just want to remind our listeners that we did a session on that, because that's what I'm feeling now. I feel as if that's in my heart. Whereas before, it felt as if the exercise was in my head. Do you know what I mean? It's like it as if it has come down.
Yes.
Down into my heart.
Yes. This is really beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, mastery, going back to the topic, what is mastery? Mastery is when you're bringing first your awareness of what's not conscious, which includes how you're formed, into your conscious awareness. And then we're using that, we're conversing with it, asking that level of us, or that embodiment of us, to connect to what we're experiencing here. And literally that union of that conversation transforms our perspective by simply making the connection. It's that ridiculously simple.
Say that again, Teon.
So it's the conversation between the causal presence that's formless and is the energy of truth, and whatever we're experiencing here. When those connect and communicate, it transforms the perspective that we were experiencing here.
Wow.
It's that simple.
Wow. And would we practice the same if we wanted to release trauma of any kind, whether it's
absolutely, yeah,
past life or child abuse or alcoholism or no matter what it is, is that the way to introduce causal to it and it to causal?
Ultimately, yes, because you're taking it out of the polarity, you're taking it out of the struggle and suffering, you're introducing it back to, here's what you truly are. Here's where you exist in a pure, undistorted plane.
Wow. I tell you, this feeling I have now, the sensation I have now is like, it's like my heart just doesn't know any fear. Do you know? Yeah. It's like, it's very difficult to put words on it. It's expansive.
Yeah.
It feels clean. It feels forgiven, even. If I could, yeah. That's a sensation. It feels forgiven. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a beautiful place, right? We've introduced mastery, but you've actually experienced yourself in this other way of what what things are beyond duality. And it's a sensory experience of that, but beyond duality.
Well, do you know what I find also astonishing about this is that in, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, you've introduced something, a feeling, a perspective, an experience that I know there are many so-called gurus in the world today that would charge thousands of dollars to teach something that wouldn't come anywhere near this kind of expansion that you've just described, this kind of mastery.
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting time that these things that have been developed over lifetimes are becoming so simple.
Yeah.
These things that used to take so much time and effort are becoming, gently aware. And many of the things I've learned are how to present what I know in the simplest way. I'm
Yes.
learning from others, what's the easiest way to talk about stepping into an experience and just letting it be, right?
Yeah.
But adding to it with my own flavor, or bringing in this idea of, let me introduce the planes. That's very innovative.
Yes.
It's really not something others are thinking about a lot, because we thought of those as separate
Yes.
where places you live, and bringing them together. Now everything's so direct and simple.
That's very beautiful.
So yeah, it's meant to be shared, like your perspective, my perspective, others who are waking up. We all add to this because it's forming a new kind of reference point or a new model of how to be here.
So when others talk about the new world or the new human and ascension and all these words that people use to describe this, how do you describe it? Is you're describing the same thing in a different way, or is it all the same thing?
I think people are now talking more about embodying, because ascension is a word that's can be problematic.
Sure.
Right? We're ascending, but to where? Where are we going? Not really anywhere. We're bringing in the ascended experience into our embodied experience. We're, bringing
Right.
communication in between
Yes.
all of that. And that's why I tend to use embodied, because the idea is to feel beyond duality and feel that experience and perceive that viewpoint, where there's no room for, you don't have to beat up on yourself anymore, because it just is, it just auto transforms to a different quality of you exist and things just are.
Well, you use the word viewpoint, and there's a viewpoint that I know I have in the past looked upon the body as being separate and in that way deserving of punishment, and that's kind of a religious also coercion around things, and it is a viewpoint. So instead of looking that the body, there's something wrong with the body because it's separate from our creator, let's say, or even to go religion with it, from God, that we should be punished because we separated, that idea, right? What you're saying is allow God to be in everything.
I'm saying God is already in everything.
Yes, it's our awareness. It's our awareness that's allowing it,
right?
accepting it. Yes.
So allow our awareness to become conscious of.
So there's no need for punishment of the body at all. Because we have decided
that's an old distortion, right?
Yes.
I start to see more and more of these things as, okay, that's a distortion.
Yeah.
Not really that fun.
Right.
Don't really need that. I can let that go. So in relationships, like in relationships, we're often taught, okay, I need to feel that person's pain and be present with what they're going through, join them in that struggle. And kind of where we're going is, those are old models for relationship, because each one of us can connect to our causal presence, our astral presence, right? And we can start letting go of those distortions.
Right.
and so quickly finding our existence. And it's then going to be conversations about, okay, do I have ill health? Well, what am I not speaking? What am I not bringing into awareness? What am I not understanding so that it can reconnect with my causal presence, reintroduce itself? Because from the reintroduced place, things just start to naturally heal.
Mm-hmm.
As we spiritualize the physical, peel back the veil, then the potential for the struggle and the pain and the illness is erased when we spiritualize it. We're starting to erase it because we're removing the separation itself. Right?
Removing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let me ask you a question, Teon, about manifesting.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of our motivations for things, including the asking of questions, comes from trying to clear past programming,
Yeah.
So when gurus speak of manifesting, it's like the law of attraction and these various other modalities, right? So in the light of what you've just taught us there about mastery, explain how manifesting in the physical works from that perspective.
Okay. So when we're connected to causal, we're again in the formless. So manifesting from the Panchatattva down is a concept, right? Because we can now create form. In the causal, no need to manifest. You just exist.
Okay.
Okay? You don't need anything. Okay? So now the foundation you want to manifest from is that sense of existence where you don't need anything. There's no pressure to it.
Yes, yes.
Right? So when you feel that causal presence we're starting with, right?
Yeah.
It's playful. You
Right.
don't need anything.
Yeah.
You exist eternally, but it might be fun to do something.
Yeah.
So first of all, we want to have that feeling or foundation. Where do we start the threshold? Where do we step in? Where's the doorway begin for manifesting? We want to start in that happy place. Okay?
Right. Not out of need or
Right. Right. So if you're feeling it a need, we
Yeah.
can connect the sense of responsibility, the pain, the heaviness back up to causal.
Yeah.
And now we're in a more fun, playful, creative place. That's where we're going to begin from. Okay. So now, in order to feel like you can be fully taken care of, that your causal presence, your astral presence can form the things you want and need for sustenance and experience here and connection and whatever your physical experience is, right? We want to know how we are assembling and forming experiences. So it's not this unconscious thing that's happening to us, but it's a conscious thing we're bringing our awareness to.
Yes.
Okay. So that'll be we'll do as a closing exercise. We're going to go inward and we're going to connect to the energy of the timeline. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. What is your perception? And I shared that.
It was like a kind of immunity to everything that's going on in the world that we perceive as negative. I got this sense of an immunity. Now, not that it doesn't exist on some level, but that I could feel the understanding of it all at,
Yeah.
at different levels. So the worry about it was like washed away.
Yeah. So prior to the exercise, was there anything you wanted to manifest or was thinking you needed or had any tension around it?
But let's take more money as
Okay.
as
So
an example, because it's a universal want, desire, and need too. So let's tackle that.
okay. So we're feeling the version of you that's comfortably experiencing more money, right? That's where we're going to start. There is a version of you that knows how things are created, that is in the causal, right? That version of you already has the Panchatattva, can form anything. There's versions of you in the astral that feel creating things in form is instantaneous and quick because everything is luminous, right? And we can have any mixture of that, from the all-knowing of anything can be formed, everything already exists, that blend, to a particular thing, a particular flavor of wealth or lifestyle or whatever more money becomes in your environment, right? So feeling the luminous light of you can create things easily. I'm doing this rather abstract. And you've got the timeline where you can put things when and where you want. So what does that feel like?
I was lost in it. I'm sorry. It was
Okay.
very, very liberating in that sense that it took away any fear about it not manifesting, you know, or any outcome. There was no attachment to the outcome, and it felt very playful, which was a joyful thing. So instead of looking at money as, oh gosh, I don't have enough and where am I going to get more, it was a sense of like playing with it to be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
It was very I used the word forgiveness earlier on because that means a lot to me personally, but it felt as if you were worrying for nothing, you know, instead of just playing with this and having fun and realizing how powerful you are, you know, you've been doing the opposite. So
So there's two things we introduced there, right? And they're pretty big concepts. So let's kind of unwrap those. The first one was seeing the timeline. So when we're seeing the timeline, we're seeing a network of experiences that forms what gets sequenced as physical time for each of us. But it's actually just a network of light. And you can put different experiences, you can rearrange what's going to happen from your causal presence. You have all the way to astral, you have the full ability to manipulate that. So what I was doing was starting to bring the awareness of that level of you into conscious awareness. There's still a lot to play with, but as a foundation, right, going back to feeling and being aware that you're consciously aware that all that's happening. Okay. The second thing I did is, instead of saying, let's picture money, I said, let's picture the astral bright luminous you that can make anything, that can have money to do whatever, like it's instant. And we want to embody that energy, because then here in the physical, the inspired actions to go receive that money is a lot easier. The possibilities of materializing something are a lot easier. So you could have a sequence of events that unfold receiving something, or you could just have the something appear out of the ethers, right? It doesn't matter. You're just playing with all of it.
Yeah.
I'm introducing you to the conscious awareness where you can play.
Where do you see this going, Teon, now in a timeline for and just thinking humanity and the world? Where do you see it going? What you have taught us today?
So I see I'm part of the awakening group of millions, right? That are seeing this, the reality that we're just pure energy and consciousness, and that we can be consciously aware of how it forms, right? So I see people becoming more healthy because they're realizing they don't have to be distorted.
Mm.
I see people being more alive and playful because they realize there's nothing that serious here. Right? I see people, attracting things that they want that are matched to what's right for them.
Mm.
And when you're leaving the struggle, you don't have to have poverty.
Right.
And so it's really just like I'm planting the seed of here's what's possible. There's this framework of reality, and you can have a really fun, magical, directed, intelligent experience here.
Wow. Well, I don't know how to thank you enough for sharing that wisdom with us today. Honestly, I'm at a loss for words. I'm just so grateful, and
Yeah.
I feel the benefit of what you've described already.
Yeah.
And I will do everything that I can to share that with others too.
Yeah. And I invite all the listeners, use this as a jumping off point to play and explore, right? To bring more into your conscious awareness. So if you listen to a certain video or meditation technique that says, here's how you manifest, or you're doing inward to heal or embody more, right? There's certain things I introduced that are jumping off points to play and explore more.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful. Okay. And for people to get in touch with you, Teon, how do they do that?
So if you come onto Meetup, if you find the group called Sedona Multidimensionals, we have a meetup on Saturdays. Or you can go to my website, yourawakeningresource.com.
I'll put the links to that down below. Yes. Great. Okay. Again, huge thanks, immense gratitude to you for what you're doing. And I don't know what else to say. I'm just blessed, feel very blessed. And we will share far and wide. Okay, Teon Lucas, thank you very much again for being with us.
And thanks for having me. I had a really good time.
Great.
This was
Take
fun.
care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Aingeal Rose and Ahonu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.